everything in, believe it or not, because there's so
Indeed.
much. We'll
It's going to be a busy one. I'm expecting it to be busy on the old YouTube. I think I might be a referee rather than just directing. There we go, we're live. Away you go, guys.
Okay. From Table Tennis Scotland, welcome to our Monday night Zoomcast. My special guest tonight is Commonwealth medalist, former British champion and 4-time Scottish champion, which is a record. So is the fact that he's appeared in 20 finals. Welcome to our Zoomcast, Gavin Rumgay. So we'll be speaking to you very shortly. Once again, we have the panel of current Scottish and British champion Colin Dalgleish and national player and current selector Mark Lundberg. Matt will be picking up your responses on YouTube, and I think we're going to have a lively evening. Now, tonight we're going to start at a different point. We normally start at the beginning, which I'm really looking forward to. But this time, I did mention in the introduction that you've played in 20 national finals, and that is a good starting point before we look back. Michael Mays, who is recognised as one of the Danish greatest ever player, has only won it once. So it's testament to the fact that you've always supported the national championships, you've always valued it, and it's always been part of you. What do you think playing in the nationals, Gavin? 20 finals.
Well, it's funny you say that, Dave. 20 finals. It makes me sound like I might be about 55 years old. But no, it's been great. It's always good to come back to Scotland. Usually the national championships are at the start of March, so we all prepare, usually the month before that, and it's good. It builds year on year, I feel. I think I started playing the national championships for the junior categories when I was 12. So it's been a long career, and if you want to be a successful table tennis player, then longevity is very, very crucial.
Gavin, just to actually take you back to national championships, I actually think it was your first title when you were 12 years old, because I was playing against you that season, where you hadn't actually won a title, and then you got to national championships and beat me in the final at 12 years old, and went on to win every other event that season and knocked me off the #1 spot. So thanks for bringing that up. Just good memories to start with.
You're too kind, Mark. You just let me. But no, I mean, for those of you viewing this at the moment, Mark, who's on here tonight with me, obviously, he was a big influence in my career in the early stages, and Mark's dad as well, Eric. The two of them together were a big influence in my early years. Mark was a very good server of the ball, and I think in table tennis that's crucial. It's the only time in the point where you have complete control of the ball, and I think from an early stage, obviously from my tennis years as well, I knew that it's good to get the point started and be well ahead in the rally. So I think thanks to Mark for getting the ball rolling for me in my early days.
Sorry, you won't thank me later with some of the questions that come in your way, so we'll take that early.
Actually, your titles span over 3 decades, Gavin. Do you know that? 3 decades of championship titles. Can we just, what I'd like to do, because I know the viewers are interested in this, tell us about, we're going to stick to the fact you've played in a number of finals that you haven't won, and that's always harder. So you're constantly having to play Ewan Walker. How was that feeling? Ryan Jenkins mentioned that he had to play in 2 or 3 finals. What was your mindset going into all these finals?
Yeah, I mean, I think when later on in my career, when I went to Sweden, I hooked up there with a guy called Soren Allen, and he had been the head coach of England, and he always used to come into the hall on a Monday. And some of us at the weekend, we'd played tournaments, we'd played well, or we hadn't played so well. And he always used to say, it's better to win than to lose. And that's, I maintain that my whole career. When you step back in your car on a Saturday evening, you're driving home, it's much better if you've won the tournament than you haven't. But the important thing is to bounce back from defeats. And obviously the most recent defeat for me was by Colin. And, it's tough, but you always have to respect, that someone else is playing the final against you, that there's another 2, 3, 4, 5 very good players in Scotland that, on their day can play some good table tennis as well. And obviously that was good in the early days for me to have, the likes of Ewan Walker, who was a better table tennis player than I was. You have to get into the fight. You have to learn very early on how to win table tennis matches. And I think my first 3 finals, I think from 2000, 2001, 2002, I lost to Ewan Walker in the final of the men's singles. I don't remember too much about those. You always tend to remember more about the ones you win. But yeah, that was the start of it. I think I was still 15 at the time when I reached my first final.
It was interesting, that period, because what was noticeable, you always came, obviously you wanted to win, and eventually you did become that winner. Nobody wins 14 titles, without being a winner. But I have to say, you always took those defeats against Ewan with good grace, because I was tended to be in the opposite corner. You wasn't looking for excuses. You didn't blame the referee. You didn't blame the coach. Is that part of your mentality, focusing on yourself, do you think?
Yeah, it's just having a good upbringing. It's you learn respect from a young age if you have very good parents. And that's where that comes from. So very early on, you learn from your mum and dad what they do on a day-to-day basis when they played matches, which they did obviously in their badminton careers. You watch when they've won or lost matches, how they conduct themselves. So I think that's where it comes from. Over my career, I've probably, ironically, lost more matches than any other Scottish player, because I've probably played more matches than anyone else, whether it's been on the Pro Tour, whether it's been on the British League, UK Grand Prix, or national championships. So you do get used to losing as well as winning.
Your first national title. So I do want to move on from national titles, but I thought it was a good starting point. You played Ewan 3 times, and then I think Ewan didn't play, and then that was you on the road, and you had some cracking finals, didn't you? Really, you had some cracking finals.
Yeah, some really good finals. First final was my first win was against Stuart Crawford from Falkirk. Very good friend. And again, owe a lot of my career to Stuart Crawford, Jerry Campbell, a lot of the guys from Falkirk who took me in when I was younger. My mum and dad would take me through there 2 or 3 times a week to practice with those guys. So I knew Stuart's game very well, but he obviously knew my game very well too. And I think the first 2 finals that we played were both 4-3.
They were.
And I suppose, Stuart, one of the nicest guys in Scottish table tennis, but he'll go down in the record books as probably the Jimmy White of Scottish table tennis. Not quite managing to push through when he had opportunities to win.
Tell us about Bloodgate, the Bloodgate final, when you played Ewan and you got the nosebleed. That was an incredible final, out of nowhere.
Unbelievable. I do remember that one now. That was a sore one, because I think that whole day I was playing quite well. I was winning quite comfortably, and Ewan at the other side of the draw was struggling the whole way through. I do remember watching his game against Jerry Campbell, which was at 2 sets all, 7 all, 8 all or something, and he managed to sneak his way through. But Ewan basically did that his whole career. When things got close, he managed to win at the business end of the match, and that's what, you know, the top table tennis players do. That's why I suppose myself and Ewan have won. I don't know how many have we won. 27 of the last 29 or 30 years.
Fantastic. Okay, then let's go back to 1991. We normally start off with the Zoomcast. It's a player who was playing football and then he moves on and he plays table tennis. But your your early stages are completely different. It started with short tennis in 1991.
It did. And what a great game short tennis is. For those of you at home that don't know short tennis, you should get your kids involved in well, it's actually changed names from short tennis to mini tennis now, if you look it up on Google. It's basically a shortened game of tennis with a sponge ball played on a badminton court with the net lowered down. And I started that at 7 years old, and it was my mum and dad who ran a short tennis club in Perth, got me introduced. 2 or 3 years later, got my sister introduced to the mini tennis. And it's a great game as well when you've got lots of young kids in an enclosed space. You've got lighter rackets. Kids are swinging rackets around. It could be a little bit dangerous, but these rackets are a lot lighter. There's lots of balls flying around all over the place. Again, if you get hit in the face with a sponge ball, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just a good introduction to playing sport. So yeah, 1991 started with short tennis, and a couple of years later, I was the national under-10s champion. And then the following year, I managed to defend my title. And in both of those finals, I played a little Russian guy who had moved to Scotland, Simon Konov. And a little bit like Monica Seles in the tennis, he had the double-handed forehand and backhand, which, you know, that was very unique at that stage and still is. And the next year, I then played against a guy, David Vernon. Now, his younger brother now has played international rugby, Richie Vernon, for Scotland. So yeah, that was a good introduction to my sporting career. And again, I'd like to thank my parents for that. They were very good badminton players, but they thought it would be sensible to start with the mini tennis.
Then did you go down south and go to Wimbledon and met Judy Murray and went to this multi-stage fitness test? Can you just give us a little rundown? You still haven't played table tennis yet, and yet there's a long career before your table tennis career. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so in 1994, win the Scottish mini tennis tournament, and I think the top 3 or 4 of us are then invited down as part of Team GB. And I mean, it's great. You know, at that age, you're soaking up all the information, all the atmosphere. We get down to Wimbledon. We go down in a minibus, and it's myself. There's Jamie Murray is there as well, and we go down to the players' room at the back of the centre court at Wimbledon, and we meet Boris Becker and Michael Steek. And Michael Steek was one of my dad's favourite tennis players. I think he won Wimbledon in the 1980s, I think. Boris Becker, obviously, similar time, and then into the early 90s as well. So, you know, that was so important. And then it ends up that these guys sort of become role models, and it doesn't feel then like you're so far away from meeting these stars when you're actually there yourself. We also then got paraded round the centre court of Wimbledon as well. And as a 10-year-old kid, it feels like it's a football stadium. It's absolutely massive. So that was good. And then we forward, you know, another year, and I'm starting to get involved with big tennis, the lawn tennis, and we go to all these multi-stage fitness tests, which I suppose at 11 years old, the last thing you want to be doing is that. You want to have a tennis racket in your hand and you want to be hitting balls across the net. So that was tough. I went to Stirling, to the National Centre there, Jamie Murray, Andy Murray, lots of other good players. And it would be a Friday night through to a Sunday, and all we would do was various types of fitness, whether it was sprinting around the court, whether it was jumps, whether it was long distance running, coordination exercises, all that sort of stuff. But, you know, I feel that before the age of 12, it's very important that your body's mapped out for the rest of its life by that time. So if you've done lots of fitness by the age of 12, then I suppose that's what's going to keep you going longevity wise. So that's why I feel now at 35 years old, you know, body's still in reasonable shape. It's all from what you've done from a young age.
Mm. That's certainly the case, because when we had Ewan Walker and Ian Stokes on, I mean, Ian was saying when he worked very hard, he had fantastic movement around the table, but he felt his body going. Ewan started to pick up lots of injuries at the age of 29 and in his early 30s. But I was surprised when I came back how fit you were, Gavin. I mean, I was absolutely amazed, and that's again great credit to you. You've looked after yourself. And I see many good years ahead of you. So before, we haven't even started to play table tennis yet. So, so you're still playing tennis, and somehow you change your bat to, well, you don't actually change your bat. You decide to play both. Tell us how you got into table tennis.
Table tennis. I started in the house and the dining room table with my granddad. I think my mum and dad were away out working, as they always did, and granddad thought it would be sensible to put up, I think it was a cardboard net on the dining room table, and off we went. We never looked back. I'd play that, 3 or 4 afternoons a week, and that was good fun. And then we seen an ad in the paper for the Letham Community Centre that said, basically, we have a table tennis club and we are itching for some young new stars to get introduced to the sport of table tennis. And probably Mark will be able to say more about that than me, being a couple of years older. I don't remember too much about that, Mark.
It's quite a good story, actually. So my dad was the director of coaching of Perth table tennis. So he decided, well, in previous years, and Dave helped out with this, used to hold exhibitions and used to get about 20, 30 players down to the club. And then this year, for whatever reason, in his wisdom, he decided, we'll put an advert, because table tennis is going really well. We had I started getting recognition for table tennis, Gillian Edwards as well, and put an ad in the paper, and we got 3 people turned up. That was it. 3 people at Letham Table Tennis Club or Letham Community Centre, and that was Gavin, his sister Laura, and another tale was actually the great Helen Elliott, her granddaughter Tracy. So that was the 3 players that turned up for our summer table tennis, and I think it's a story my dad quite fondly remembers of just because it was probably a failure in trying to get players into table tennis, but you couldn't get anyone better. Obviously, your sister's success in table tennis as well, and obviously Gavin and Tracy turned up, and that's how obviously it was after school, and that's how you started.
Wow, very, very interesting that, and it was really enjoyable as well. The way that the sessions were ran, there was a lot of freedom to just experiment with serving, receiving of serve, and obviously I was very fortunate early on to start knocking with you straight away. I mean,
I think sort of back then as well is that we're obviously very competitive, and as something that was recognised in coaching earlier on is my dad was never a good coach, but obviously a facilitator. Was he recognised speaking to people like David, and he has a good friendship with David, and was how do you get the best out of young table tennis players? Obviously doing sessions, and he recognised obviously one-to-one sessions, and coaches were brought up, and I think that was your fast development of rising to someone. I think you started playing in the summer as a minor, and certainly by December time, you were certainly the top 4 or 5 under 12s. And then that point by March time in the first years when you had your first national title, certainly in that first year. But that was your natural ability to sport. And I think that was recognised, but it was actually the influences of other coaches coming up to Perth and training with us that we ended up having a good group together, where it became one-to-one sessions, and then in a group what we were practicing one-to-ones we'd then do in a group session. And that's basically our first sort of 5-6 years in table tennis. That's basically how we trained, was sort of one-to-ones and then going into mass group sessions and obviously training with other players in different areas as well.
And there was Tom Hook, wasn't there? There was Tom Hook, who was the coach that was brought through from Edinburgh. I used to enjoy his sessions, crashing down all the Coke cans at the end of the session. To look forward to that. And then from further afield, from Newcastle, there was Peter McQueen. And I think he was a 3rd or 4th Dan in, karate or whatever it is. So that was a lot of fun as well. I had a lot of respect for him. And I felt he was a very good coach and in being able to break down the game. Mm-hmm. Every part of the game.
He's listening tonight, Gavin, I can assure you. He asked me for the link. Okay,
right.
Message for Peter?
I just hope you're safe and well, Pete. And it would be good if I do come and play possibly a Grand Prix tournament again up in your neck of the woods to have a chat. That'd be great. I think that hopefully there would be another Newcastle Grand Prix at some stage in the next 1 or 2 years. It'd be nice to meet up with him again.
Yeah, if I could just come in here, because I think what is important here is that Mark's dad, Eric, he had the vision. He brought in good players, he brought in good coaches, but he wasn't afraid to let his players go to other coaches to give them that broad experience. He saw the bigger picture, where sometimes I worried when I worked down south, some of the coaches are incredibly insular. They don't like letting the players go. Therefore, that holds back the development. Eric was never like that. He would, if there was a good coach about, he would get brought up. And as you say, there was Gavin, there was Gillian Edwards, Matt Lofthouse, not bad, decent player, Juliet Lane, Laura, and obviously Mark was the leading light at the time. I mean, what a bunch of half a dozen players, and Alison Bro came up, didn't she? She coached, and no, absolute gold dust. Mark's dad, gold dust. Shall we take a question, Colin? It's about time you said something.
No questions. Oh no.
One of your own or one from the?
I mean, I've got. We've obviously not heard much about Gavin's career so far, but just one I wanted to ask personally. I mean, some people dream of being able to play such a legend such as Timo Boll, but you played him at his home World Championships in Germany. Now, the last 128 in the main draw. I just wondered what that kind of experience was like, especially on one of the show courts.
I've spoken to a few of my clients in the last 6 months, the guys I coached down in London, and I've, because they all wanted to know what it was like to play against Timo Boll as well. And it's a strange one. He was such a nice guy before we even went on the court. You know how you go to the call area 20 minutes before the match? He was chatting to me there, and we were gently sort of warming up together, running around the hall. He wasn't intimidating at all. What was more intimidating was walking out onto centre court, and there's 17,000 people in the crowd, all shouting Timo. There's about 3 people shouting for me. that was quite scary. But then once the match started, I couldn't believe how slow he was hitting the ball. But there was nothing you could do about the shots he was playing, the positions he was playing. It was almost as if he was 1 or 2 steps ahead of me in a point right from the start. His serve would hit the white line. His spins were really, really high, where you almost lost sight of them. They were so high, and then they would bounce down on the white line at the back of the court. it was just like playing a totally different sport. Very, very difficult to describe. You know, I'm used to practicing with Mike O'Driscoll down in London. You know, he hits a rocket of a ball off bounce. And you would think, oh, maybe he plays a little bit like Mike because he's left-handed. It's just so different. It's slow, you know, but he's thinking about his placements, never misses a third ball, never really missed a receive of serve either. So no, it was a fascinating match, and one definitely when I retire from the game, I'll look back on as a big learning point in my career. Even into my 30s, you still learn a lot about what's happening on the table.
Colin, I'll let you have a second bite at the cherry before I continue the journey.
I'll ask another one of my own questions. Obviously, again, we've not really gone on to this, but you played in a lot of many different leagues in many different countries in Europe. I just wondered what you felt was the strongest league you played in. And also, did the table tennis culture between the countries change much, or did you find many differences between the countries?
I've been very fortunate over my career to make good choices of the clubs that I go to. You know, I had some good offers early doors at the start of my career, you know, and you've got to try and weigh things up, you know, from what you've heard before. Is France good? Oh, Switzerland's a good league. No, but Germany's a lot stronger. You know, you try and listen to people, but then you obviously, you know, ultimately you have to make your own decision. And for me, with my sort of relaxed personality style, I think it's, for me, I mixed really well with the Swedes. The Swedes, you know, they had that sort of banter, they had that talent on the table, but they were also very relaxed off the table. And I enjoyed my time there. And that was a really good choice for me at, I think, 21 years old when I moved to Sweden full time. And then I played the following year, I played in the Swedish elite division. And that's to answer the first part of your question. That is the strongest league I've ever played in. I won 4 matches and lost 28. Have some of that. What that is. You know, if you got 4 out of 28 questions right in your maths exam, you wouldn't be doing so well. So that was tough. But as Dave touched on at the start of this meeting, you know, I'm all right when I lose matches. I bounce back. You know, I'm not happy to lose, but you have to learn very quickly. You're a professional player. You're getting paid for what you do. And at that stage, at 20 years old, there are just lots and lots of players that are much better table tennis players than me. So you have to open your eyes and ears to what's going on and get out there and improve every part of your game. If you do that, you can come back the next season, hopefully a stronger and better player.
Okay, and we'll stay with the National League. So you've just signed for a new club. Do you want to just tell us about that? I filled in the paperwork today.
So hope you didn't take a percentage, did you? No, yeah, I think it's Bundesliga 3, and it's a club that have got good money. They're a stable club. I would love one day to play in the actual Bundesliga, but I think you've got to be sort of, I would say 50, 60, 70 in the world to do that. But I've been approached by a club called Union Velber, which is close to Dusseldorf. I've never trained at Dusseldorf, but I know how strong that place is. So possibly I can get to a few matches and maybe tie in a little bit of training there. My teammates are Lars Helscher, who I think he played in the German national team for years. And believe it or not, he's older than me. I think he's about 40. Oof. That'll bring on another nosebleed. So yeah, we've got him, and we've got Constantine Ciotti, Romanian, who a year older than me, but he was the European junior #1 in the year before I played. So, you know, it's a fantastic team, and we could do well in that too for the following season.
Yeah, and how many matches will you be playing, Gavin?
I'm going to play in a handful of the matches. it's a contract where I've got a minimum of 6 matches. And then depending on whether they bring an Asian player in at some point in the season, a lot of the clubs are open to that. So let's see. But it's exciting. You know, I had 6 amazing years in Switzerland, and they were, you know, they're very good friends now. There's a guy, Daniel Memi. You know, he's become one of my best mates. Spent 6 brilliant years there, where I took that team up from the second LNA B up into the elite Swiss division, and we battled year after year there. And probably the best moment in Switzerland was when we won the Swiss Cup, and that, you know, it was 6 players against 6 players, and I was in position 1, and I was stronger than the position 1 in the other team. But in the other 5 positions, our players were weaker than those 5 players. And we somehow, after all of those matches, like 13 matches, we managed to win 7 matches to 6. And I think that's probably one of my biggest wins overall in a team setting. And I really enjoyed that.
A couple of things on that. We went back to Switzerland to play a European League match, and they loved you there, Gavin. They did, didn't they? Even though you've won 2 of your matches, you got a warm reception. You played very well. As I say, you almost dragged the team to a victory. Now, just for the players and coaches who have not experienced European League, can you give me the routine? Catch a plane the day before, 3 days before, a week before. Tell us an average Bundesliga match or playing in Europe from leaving home.
Yeah, so a lot of the matches, it's almost like you should be a professional player, because the leagues I've played in over the years, the exception being Switzerland, that was a Saturday and Sunday, which was actually ideal now that I've got my business down here and stuff. A lot of the matches in France and in Sweden are on Tuesday nights. So if you've got a full-time job, difficult to be, you know, a player that's getting money. So a lot of the time I would go out to these matches on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, stay there, eat with the team Monday afternoon, practice Monday night, practice again Tuesday morning, and then slowly through the day gearing up with the coach, who would then get the 3 or 4 of us in the team ready for the match, thinking about the serves that we need to use against specific players. Obviously in Sweden, I was either playing the top national Swedish players or very top sort of Chinese B-level players who were very strong. So you have to get your tactics right. You can play a great match with wrong tactics, you've got no chance of even winning a set. So yeah, there's a lot of preparation. You know, you go out to these European matches that are maybe on a Tuesday night, but you are there a lot of the time for 3 days. So it's quite time consuming.
After the match, you finish the match, do you get the next plane home? Do you stay the night?
Depends what league it is. Usually it's a case of having a few drinks and going to a really nice restaurant somewhere. If it's been a good match and there's not been, you know, too much controversial stuff happened, then you'll go with the away team and eat with them. Sometimes it wasn't like that though, and you would end up, you know, going your separate ways. They would eat in some restaurant, we would eat somewhere else. But you know, 9 times out of 10, it was just a very good atmosphere at the end of matches. And probably the best atmosphere for that was in Belgium when I played there for a season. And obviously there you have, I think Ryan Jenkins touched on that last week, you have the bar and the sort of mini club set up. You've got the glass that goes then right through to 4 or 5 table tennis tables through into the table tennis hall. And you have lots of small clubs over the country that are very interested in table tennis at whatever level people play at. And I think that's something that we really need to try and introduce in our country if our sport is to expand again.
Right, I'm just going to go to 1998, which was quite a special year, and then I'm going to hand you over to Mark, and he can fire away some of the questions. So, what happened in 1998?
1998. Wow. I became the 14 and under table tennis champion of Scotland. I also won the under 17s as well. So, that, I think that's very important as well. As a coach or as a developing player in whatever sport you're doing, the players that are going to be really sort of standout performers in the future are ones that are winning at an age group above. So for me, it was 13 years old. I could win under 18s in Scotland for table tennis. Again, as you see with Harimoto, the top Japanese player, physicality doesn't come into table tennis as much. There's certain styles of play that you can maybe, you can get into your game that can help. You can stay closer to the table if you have less power, and then you just have to hopefully have the ability to win. In tennis, it's very different. If someone is bigger and stronger than you, I'm not going to beat someone at 17 years old when I'm 13 in tennis. They're just going to blow you off the court. They're going to serve at 125 miles an hour down the tee, and you're not going to get it. So tennis, I was the national champion, 12 and under, and then in 1998, I became the 14 and under champion. And what would become typical in my career in years to come would be that comeback instinct. Okay, I was 6-love, 3-love down in the national final against Jamie Murray, and back I came to win love 6, 7-6, 7-6. And I think to this day, that's one of the biggest comebacks I've made in any sport. And that was a big moment. I think at that stage, Jamie Murray was probably favourite to beat me. He had beaten his brother in the semi-final, so he was in good form. But yeah, that's something that happened. And then 1998, I was still playing badminton at that stage as well. My mum and dad had introduced me to badminton at 12 years old, and I was trying to go for the treble in the 3 sports, but I fell short at the quarter-final stage of the badminton national championships. I lost to the number 1 seed. So there you go.
I've got one final question. So was it then you decided to part ways with tennis, or was tennis and badminton, or did that come a year or two later?
Yeah, tennis was becoming financially brutal, especially on my parents, and it was starting to sort of, affect their relationship slightly as well. They were having to try and come up with £10,000 or £15,000 a year to fund my tennis career, and I still felt until about 15 years old that I was a tennis player. And even to this day, I still feel when I get on a tennis court, everything is very, very natural. My style, I hold the racket like Nadal, way around the racket, and spin the ball loads. I still feel to this day I'm a table tennis player that is still playing tennis shots. But that's made my career quite, special as well. The fact I've been able to adapt my tennis style to table tennis, and obviously the touch and feeling that I've got from other sports has definitely helped in my serve and receive elements for table tennis too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you said to me during the week, it was also at that point where, again, Mark's dad, Eric, sort of said, look, we can look after you. We can make you a good table tennis player. It's not going to cost you a fortune. You can have a lift with us. You can have a lift with the national squad. Really, that was quite a turning point in your career, I'd say. That
was huge. And, it's important as well at any age in sport that you keep things fun. There's lots of kids I coach down here, 11, 12 years old, 17, 18. Doesn't matter what age someone is, you've got to keep sport enjoyable. So we used to have a great laugh going down to these Grand Prix events with Eric and Mark, and you know, they would do the general knowledge quiz and all that sort of stuff in the car, and it used to always be Mark that would win that.
I was just about to come on to that because you mentioned earlier, Gav, just about your 1998 was I was the person that you beat in one of them, and I've just the general knowledge quizzes. I don't think you ever beat me.
Well done, exactly. No, that was it. That was good, and that got you into the right frame of mind for your matches as well, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, whose turn is it now? Is it Mark or Collins? I've just
well, I just wanted to touch on the early years, and obviously I have a lot of sit and listen, and it's great memories going back about these things. But something that's come up was playing in local leagues. Now, it's something these days that top players sort of quite early on when they reach it, they don't want to play in a local league. Quite clearly, some of the level that or maybe the strength of the league isn't good. But certainly something that you've done right up until maybe about 16, 17 maybe. You played in the Dundee League, you played in the Perth League, you played in the Edinburgh League. How much influence did it have? And obviously, what's your memories of playing some matches back then?
For me, you know, it was from an early age of sort of 10, 11, 12, I was always in the top classes at school for, you know, mathematical subjects. So your accounts and finance, maths, that sort of stuff. So for me, percentages and numbers and all that stuff was really important. So if I could get 100% in the Perth League, or I could get 98% in the Edinburgh League, that always meant something to me. You know, if I could go down to a British Junior League and win 39 out of 40 and get a great percentage, you know, so that always kept things fun as well. And again, it's who you're associated with, or who's driving you through to these matches that makes the whole evening fun. It's not just the playing 3 matches and a doubles when you get somewhere. It's it's traveling through to Dundee with Ian Hunter, who's going to promise you a fish supper if you win your 3 matches on the way home, you know, and all that sort of stuff. That's what made everything fun as well.
That's why I had such a high percentage in leagues,
isn't it? Involved the characters that you meet at these matches, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's also the memories. Is we had some great battles in Perth. We played for actually Letham Club in Perth. We had these epic battles against Saints Blues, which is Pat Duffy, Ian Hunter, all these names that sort of people might be familiar with. But obviously, like going on, I mean, one thing obviously that I picked up on, and obviously being with you in all these events, was your learning. So you would go to one event. I think Junior British League was a great example of that. When we started off in the bottom division, but you play basically a team twice, and we battled our way through to the top division. And I think that's something that you learned throughout your career, was bridging that gap from the next time you played that event, that you would go out there. So I think also going through your junior career was obviously, you mentioned the cadets and the juniors. How did you bridge that gap to that next event? What was it from your memories of how can I do better against these English players in these events that we're playing in?
Well, that's a difficult question, but I think the most important thing was you're playing lots and lots of matches. You're playing lots and lots of different styles, which, especially in table tennis, you're going to get. Lots of times as well in Grand Prix events, I would be the number 1 seed for a band 5, a band 4, band 3. And that sets you up for later years as well, of just not being scared to lose. You know, there's probably about half the tournaments in my career that I've entered, I've been the number 1 seed. Now, there's very few players in the UK that you could say do that. And I think that was key. The thing of you step on to the table in a relaxed but a learning fashion as well. You're like a sponge. You're trying to soak up everything that's going on. You're used to the environment. You know, I used to like the Grand Prix because there was quite a big crowd by this time. You'd get to semis and finals as well. and I used to just look at the men's finals at Grand Prix, and you had Alan Cook, you had Alex Perry, you had Ryan Jenkins, and I would always sit and watch the semis and the finals of these events. Whereas a lot of kids at my age would just disappear off and run about outside, or, you know, they weren't interested in what was hopefully going to be their career in 6 or 7 years' time. Now, I noticed with the kids that I coach again down in London, the ones that are going to be the special players are the ones that have got that extra level of intelligence. And once you've finished a session with them, they then go to some other part of the hall and they go and watch other good players. They just sit down quietly on their own and they sit, they watch and they learn. And I think that's what I did more maybe than other players.
Perfect. It actually brings up a good point. It's a question on YouTube from Billy Main, North Ayrshire, about like Scottish tournaments. And there's obviously something that you only ever come up these days really to play in the Scottish Nationals, and being one of Scottish legends, you'd love to see you more playing in Scotland to inspire these young players. So what's your thoughts on that? Is there plans in the future later on to maybe influence young players in Scotland come up, maybe playing in other tournaments or more tournaments?
I mean, again, it would just depend on my, you know, business commitments down here. It's so busy down here, and I just feel more inclined to have, you know, the work closer at hand now. I've got a 1-year-old daughter now as well, who's taken up a lot of my time, even now. So, yeah, you know, Scotland is such a great place. I mean, I've got, you know, a lot of happy memories of tournaments, and, you know, all my best mates are still up in Scotland as well. And it's nice to come back up and play the national championships. But yeah, it would be nice to possibly come up and play another couple of the events as well. Maybe tie it in with some other coaching around that area. See some friends again. I don't know. That's something we have to think about.
Yeah, to be honest about it, I mean, obviously the level that you're playing at, and probably the truthful point to it, or the reality is that we want a big tournament in Scotland. I mean, obviously we've got the national championship, so it's great to see in the future. And I'm sure for Colin's development, younger players coming through and players coming up from England, Wales, and obviously the connections we have with also Ryan down in Wales. Not to say there isn't attempts to do that, but I think obviously it's probably one thing lacking, and obviously prize money comes into it, doesn't it, Gavin? Like, obviously coming up to play in a big tournament is you need to have, obviously if you've got your business commitments in London, to come up and play an event in Scotland is quite tough unless there's something in it for you to some extent. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, well, you end up, you know, you come up and play a Scottish tournament, you end up £1,000 out of pocket. That's, you know, you got to weigh that up. But then it's also great to come back to Scotland and see the family. So, you know, money's not everything, and that's something as well that has to be taken into account.
Right, Colin, do you want to launch the top 10, or do you want to launch some of the email questions? Or
yeah, I think we'll go into the quickfire quiz from Peter Shaw, because we've got some questions on YouTube that are closely linked to them as well. So it's just quite quickfire quiz. So
this is coming quite early. Jeez, brace myself.
Are you a spin-based or power-based player, or 50-50?
In table tennis, spin-based.
Timing, are you generally early, top of the bounce, or after?
If I'm playing well, early, before the top of the bounce.
What do you feel your most effective or your strongest stroke is?
Always been the service, yeah.
And your least effective or your weakest stroke?
Possibly flicking out with backhand. I suppose in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you don't really need to flick out with backhand. Maybe now you do. So yeah, that's probably the weakest part.
And if you could choose from any player the one stroke you wish you had?
Wow, that's a question. One shot I wish I had. The Emmanuel Lebesson French number 2 spin up. It's one of the spinniest, horrible forehand spin ups I've ever seen. That's a shot I still need in today's game.
Your best or favourite serve?
Well, it's got to be one where the opponent ends up top edging my kick serve and someone in the crowd catches it. So topspin kick serve down the line that was best delivered, and I think in about 2010 when I played Samsonov. And one of the first points of the match, topspin serve down the line. He comes over, top edges it into the stands, and instead of saying good serve, he bends forward and he starts to rub the table as if there was something. I thought, oh, great, thanks, Vladdy, for that.
Who's the best server you've ever received against?
Best server. I didn't play him in a match, but I played him in a training session at Nottingham. There used to be a national centre in Nottingham, and it was a Chinese guy called Sun Ting. He was a left-handed player, and he basically had the serve like Per Garel, but just much better. I think he only made sort of 150 or something in the world. So for Chinese standards, he wasn't that good, but his serve was like, an Andy Roddick serve in tennis. Incredible.
What's your favourite opponent type? So do you prefer playing defenders? Do you prefer playing somebody that's spinny, a blocker, or somebody that comes at you with a lot of power?
I love playing matches where I have to use my natural sort of touch and talent. So playing a chopper can be a lot of fun. One of my best ever wins was against a defensive player, Lin Ju, 39 in the world. But because you look at me and I'm only 10.5 stone, people think, oh, he's not got much power. He's probably not that good against chop. But there's lots of ways to play against chop. You don't need to be hitting through someone and putting a hole in the barrier. You can be spinning it like Neil Cameron and it just gets to the end of the table as well. So I used to enjoy probably playing against defensive players more than anything else. So that probably suited my style quite well.
And then your least favourite opponent type?
Probably someone like a Chris Duran that goes back or Jean-Michel Save. I played a brilliant match with Jean-Michel Save at the World Championships about 7 or 8 years ago, and he beat me 4-2. And every second point, I was having to put 25 loops on, and he's just back from the table, lob, lob, lob. But then at a British level, with the exception of Duran, you can still win the points, but at a higher level, they can be back and fish 10 or 20 balls and then send 2 backhand reloops on the barrier safe on as well. That's when it's tough to play against someone.
The best player you've ever played against?
Well, in a match play situation, best player has to be Timo Boll. Best player in practice has to be Paul Drinkle, because Paul Drinkle's in practice level is higher than I've ever played against someone in a match. The 5 or 6 times in a year, his practice level is absolutely insane.
Just one. Victory that gave you the most pleasure?
I've always had niggly matches with Andrew Rushton. So didn't have a good record against him. But then I've always been a big match player and rocked up to the 2007 Commonwealth Championships in India. Indian halls are very, very spinny, which is good for my game. The tables are really spinny. And Scotland versus England, and it's myself, Stuart Crawford, Gordon Clancy, and Jerry Campbell. And we play Scotland versus England for a medal. And we lose 3 matches to 2. But I beat Gavin Evans in the first one, and then I beat Andrew Rushton, and I almost granny him in the 5th set. It's 11-1. And that is probably my most satisfying match, Scotland versus England, and beating someone who had really struggled against style-wise for a long time.
And the last question, the player you most admire?
It's getting boring, this. It's Timo Boll again.
That's all my
No, he's
questions.
just such a nice, chilled out guy. Spent a lot of time at the T2 event out in where was that? In Malaysia, where I did a lot of commentating as well. And he would just come over and just have breakfast with me and chat. How you doing? You know, as if you knew him for the last 20 years. So again, it's got to be Big Timo.
Do you want to take a question that's been sent to us, Colin? And then Mark, I'm going to ask the same.
Yeah, I've had a question from Harvey McDonald. He said to you, Gavin, your backhand's awfully improved in recent years. Is this another reason for your recent success in the world rankings?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, you need to create an all-round game. You know, before you could serve right behind the arm. Obviously, players still think I serve behind the arm. But before, I really did serve right behind the arm, and you could basically run round blind after the serve and then hit a big forehand. So I never felt, I was quite stubborn as well of, well, I don't need a backhand because I'm so quick. But then now, once you get to the higher level, you realise that you definitely do need an all-round game. Haramoto probably the best for that. You need a backhand punch, you need a backhand spin, you need to keep your racket nice and high, you need to have a quick grip change. All stuff that in my early years I don't think I had.
Okay, do you want to take another one, Colin, from the list, and then I'm going to hand over to Mark?
Dylan Curry is asking, I've never played anyone who serves at the level of Gavin's. And do you believe you're one of the top 10 in the world service in the game?
Well, you've got to go by what other people say. And you know, whether that's a Scottish level or top level. Ovtcharov spoke to me, and he, you know, because I played him in a German league match and lost, not German, a Belgian league match. I lost very tight to him, 3-1, 12-10. It came off, and he said, you've got one of the best short serves to the forehand that he's ever played. You then had Christian Carlsen, when I beat him in a match in Sweden, and he said to me, I've got the best long serve that he's ever played against. So that's two pretty good players, you know, that I've said I've definitely got one of the best serves. But definitely these days, the serve is not coming in. You know, you guys are not playing, you know, the serve that I had in 2002. You know, it's very difficult. And guys like Gareth Herbert, who have fallen off the edge of a cliff, you know, these guys, you know, they were all about serve. And after the rule change, they all disappeared. So I'm definitely showing some sort of talent to be able to stick around for another almost 20 years now. And obviously playing the ping pong as well, where your serve is even less effective, still managing to win matches.
Mark, have we got any questions that are coming in or pre-prepared ones?
There's a question from Yazir Razuk. It's natural in sport that people always like to see the underdog win. How challenging has it been to you, and to what extent in the sort of self-confidence or belief, which is essentially being the number one player?
I mean, I just get used to it. Over the years, you come back to Scotland, and okay, I've got my set few fans, which is lovely because it's in Perth. But if everyone, you know, you want someone else to come through. Everyone in the UK loves an underdog, but I used to have it worse when I was at Grand Prix, and I would be the favourite, but then you would have a big English support going for one of the young up-and-coming kids. So you would just have to knuckle down and get stuck in. Probably one of the toughest ones was when I played Carl Preen in the final of Liverpool Grand Prix. And obviously Carl Preen was a big player years ago. And he came in, and a lot of the English fans were right for him that day. And it was just me, and I had, who did I have? I had Dennis Neal in the corner, and he was fantastic that day at just saying, blank it out. Enjoy that the crowd's against you. A little bit like what Djokovic has to deal with in the tennis every time when there's the Federer fans that have 97% of the stadium. You know, he just says when someone is cheering for Federer, he thinks, yeah, they're cheering for me. So that's probably something that I think of a little bit when I come back up to Scotland sometimes.
Well, Mark, do you want another one from the... did Colin Green ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, so Colin's question, which came on YouTube, was, are you planning to play Vex tournaments when you reach the Magic 40?
Wow, best question of the lot so far. Well, Neil Cameron is showing the way. I think you're allowed, for some strange reason, to play Vex tournaments when you're 39 as well. It's like they worry that you're going to die when you turn 40. So, yeah, I would like to be a European or a world champion. So maybe if I stick around till 40 and get to one of these big Vex tournaments, it would be great. I mean, I think the participation, I mean, it's incredible, the numbers you have at these tournaments. I've seen some of the setups where there's 55 or 60 championship size courts at some of these tournaments. I mean, that is brilliant, isn't it? Shows how big
it's actually probably the great thing about our sport. I mean, I've obviously got back into the game in the last few years after having a long hiatus, and seeing the guys that are playing Vex in Scotland is first of all, the friendship between them all, and I think that's it's fantastic to see. But actually, the competitiveness on the table, it doesn't die. And knowing you, I can actually see that actually being such a thing that you'd love to do. They keep going into the 40s, playing against these guys and winning these tournaments.
Well, you get back into it as well, Mark. We can be doubles partners.
Well, you are speaking to national semi-finalists this year. Thank you, Gavin. I just want to throw that in there.
Okay, right, Colin, let's keep we've got quite a few questions, haven't we, either that were emailed before. Colin, back to you.
Ben Hart's been quite busy on YouTube asking questions. He'd previously asked your favourite serve, which was obviously mentioned in the quickfire, but he's got a couple here at the moment. What fitness stuff do you do in your career, Gavin? And also a second question, what was the worst defeat you've taken?
Wow, questions. Right. Fitness stuff, it's changed over the years. I used to do a lot of running and, you know, shuttle runs and sprints and all that sort of stuff until about the age of 27. But I found, especially after training full time with Team GB at Sheffield, that my hips started to tighten up a bit. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to be going down the same route that Paul Drinkle, Gavin Evans had to retire, 2 bad hips. Kelly Sibley, English number 1 or 2 woman, bad hips. Liam Pitchford started to get bad hip. And I thought, oh no, I'm following suit. But it was just because I wasn't stretching enough those areas, stretching the hip flexors out and stuff. So I do a lot more of that style from probably 27 years old and beyond. Started to become wiser to that. You know, I lost to Ryan Jenkins many times over my career in Grand Prix finals, but there was definitely 3 or 4 of those times in those finals I really wasn't right and I couldn't move my hips properly. And it was at that stage I thought, this isn't good. I need to get something done about that. And thankfully, you know, now it seems like it was a thing of the past. So yeah, work on hip flexor stretches, work on mobility. What was the other question? Worst ever loss?
Yeah, worst defeat you've taken.
Worst defeat I've taken. I suppose the one where I lost to Sean. I lost to Sean in the quarterfinal of the Scottish Championships, but I don't take defeats that badly anyway. I remember there was one where I lost to Craig Howson, the only time I lost to him as well. I think it was a Grand Prix final up in Glasgow, and then we drove home together, sort of thing. I don't really take results that badly. You know, maybe there was a little bit of fire between myself and Andrew Rushton a couple of times, but no. So maybe that's the worst one, was again the crowd getting all, vocal for. But that's more for Sean, who had done well, and he'd taken a year out and went to France and worked hard and came back. But you've got to capitalise on beating the top player by getting the whole way through and winning. And I think the only time that happened in my career was Bruce Erskine. He beat me. I was trying to go for 5 times in a row for winning the junior championships. And I ended up losing, I think, in my first year junior to Bruce Erskine in the quarter-final of the Scottish Championships junior. But then, credit to him, he went on and won the tournament.
Why did you bring it? You did that on purpose to bring up my worst ever loss. Because who did Bruce beat in the final? Me.
He did.
Was that your worst ever? You must have been some player.
I know. Yeah, exactly. So you had to bring up my worst ever loss. This is about you. This isn't about me, Gavin.
Okay, Colin, go on. Either one of these or one of the emails.
Kieran Walker from South Ayrshire sent in a question. How do you keep strong mentally when you're down in a match?
I think that mindset again of it's better to win than to lose. That's you've just got to think about, where am I going home tonight after this tournament? Right, okay, I live in Bristol. I've got a tournament in Newcastle. I'm playing the final and I'm at 2 sets all. Right, this is a 5-hour drive home here, guys. I better win this. You just have to get stuck right in and believe in the serves that you've got. And a lot of the time, you've got to make sure when it gets to the business end of a big match that you're dictating the game. Table tennis, if you're not dictating the game, 9 times out of 10, you lose.
Again, Colin, I tell you what, we'll try and get through all the questions we've had, either email, YouTube.
Mick Hill sent in a question from Thailand, Bangkok. He's saying, now that you're a family man, he said, what are the odds of you ever seeing or visiting, playing in Bangkok once restrictions are lifted?
All right, Mickey Hill. Right, okay. He's a Geordie. He's from Newcastle, and last year I'm playing in the Thailand Open, having the time of my life. I'm winning the first match against an up-and-coming Italian kid, and then the match starts to turn a bit ugly. 3-0 up. Suddenly, then it's 3-1. He's leading again in the next set. I'm thinking, okay, he's going to come back and beat me here, and this is going to be a sore loss. I look up into the stands and I can just hear this Geordie accent shouting, "Where are you, man?" All that sort of stuff. Like, how you doing, mate? That's good. So I managed to crawl through that match 4-1, and then I speak to him and I have lunch with him in a shopping centre close to where we're playing. And then I just say to him, well, I've got no coach out here. How about you corner me for my next match against Seo Hoon Duk, one of the best South Korean players who's reached, I think, a ranking of about 20. So he then corners me against him, but I do get trounced 4-0, which is a shame. But I loved his enthusiasm, his positivity. And I said to him, well, you know Bangkok better than me. How about we go for maybe, a few drinks, a night out tomorrow night after the tournament? He said, no problem. And he said, right, meet me at this address tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And out we went. We went for a few drinks and we were introduced to the good old Stella. So it was a few pints of Stella. We went on to another place, another couple. And then it was getting quite close to the time that the bars close. It was like 2 or 3 a.m. and we needed to get to this certain place. He was like, we need to go to this next bar. It's amazing. And I was like, well, there's too much traffic. How are we going to get there? Right, we're going to jump in one of these tuk-tuks and we're going to get there. And the tuk-tuk, we were like, we want to go to this this certain bar, and the tuk-tuk wasn't interested until we started to flash the cash. Right, we'll give you this much more. Okay, now I'll drive you really fast. Okay, right, thanks for that. Now, this is the most nervous I've been in my life. Driving in this little tuk-tuk to this next bar, we were racing in and out of the traffic, almost dead 3 or 4 times, just mad. And every time the rev counter on this tuk-tuk reached, 7,000 revs, on came these disco lights and disco music. And it was just the most bizarre thing I've ever met. So what a great night out I had with that guy, Mick. And I just remember that ridiculously fast tuk-tuk ride.
Okay, I think, again, we're going to get through all the questions now before we go on to the next subject. Colin or Mark? Colin again? Anything from email? Paul, did Paul Silcox?
Paul Silcock, another country I've played in. He's saying Gavin has played in many different cities on his travels. This has included North Korea. What was that like?
North Korea's got to be one of the special times. I mean, who gets to go there? Apart from the likes of Michael Palin. If anyone watched the documentary there on a few months ago where he was in North Korea. And my experience in North Korea was very similar to him. I had good communication with, one of the ambassadors for North Korea, and I managed to get out to the tournament. But, it's a long journey. You get to Beijing, and then you've got to wait a few hours for a random flight that you pay in cash, which was mad. So then we get the flight of 2 hours from Beijing out to Pyongyang. And I have a translator with me the whole time I'm there as well, which I thought was a nice touch. So I'm with this person for the 6 or 7 days that I'm there, and she's communicating all the time with me. But what was evident, I suppose, the whole time was the lack of transport, the lack of cars, because of the sanctions from America as well on oil and energy, electricity. So very few cars on the road. So 95% of people are on their bicycles. And these are bicycles that your granddad would use. It makes like the Melton bikes look old. These are incredible. So that was memorable, seeing that. And, just halfway through the day, you'd be taking a shower and then suddenly the water wouldn't work. Or you would run a bath and the water was brown. So that was different. And also having to speak in Chinese a lot of the time as well. If I didn't have my translator there, if you wanted to go up and order something in a bar, in the restaurant, you had to speak in Chinese, and thankfully I know a couple of hundred words in Chinese, so I could get by. But no, a fantastic trip out there, and if anyone gets the opportunity to go there, whether it's table tennis or whatever, then definitely go for it. It's a much safer country, especially in Pyongyang, than people think.
Gavin, we need to move on a little bit. You're a Commonwealth medalist and you're a British champion. So can you just talk those through? Sorry, Gavin, could you Commonwealth medalist and...
We managed to medal in 2013 at the Commonwealth Championships, again out in India. Love India. Again, like I said, very good playing conditions for me, spinny tables. And the team was Neil Cameron, Craig Howison, Sean Docherty, and Scott Barton was there as well. So young Scott, I mean, he must have only been, I don't know, I'm guessing about 16 years old. So that would have been fantastic for him to be involved in a team like ours. And I hope to this day he's appreciated being in the national team for that. But we did really well. We managed to progress right through to the semi-final stage. And one of the big matches was against Wales. And come up against my old nemesis, the good old Ryan Jenkins. And obviously my record against Ryan wasn't very good. But on Taraflex floor, you know, the red floor that's the non-slip surface that they use in World Tour events, I had a very good record against Ryan on that. I could move quicker, I could use my forehand, I could spin the ball more. So I managed to beat Ryan basically that match for the medal. So that was super. And I think as well, Sean Docherty had a good tournament there as well. He managed to beat one of the Irish guys to get us the win against Ireland. And I think we managed to beat Malaysia as well. So it was 3 good wins on the bounce. And there's not many Scottish teams could say over the years internationally they've won 3 or 4 matches in a row.
British title or the home nation?
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't play in the British Championships that often. I couldn't even tell you the reason for that. I'm not sure. In the early days, I used to play in the Six Nations or the British Championship because I remember Ewan Walker was there, Stuart Crawford was there. Ewan Walker always had a great chance of winning. And we also did pretty well in the team event when it was, you know, myself, him, Stuart Crawford, Neil, in the later years, Craig Howison as well. But it came to 2015 and we managed to win the team event. And I think it was one of the first times that it had been myself, Craig Howison and Chris Wheeler. Chris Wheeler was a talented young kid. And he could have done some big things in the sport. But I think he got injured, which is a shame, in his arm. So that ended his playing career. Don't know whether in future years he can come back. It would be nice to see him again. But yeah, we win the team event. We managed to beat a team of England, which did have Helshan Weerasinghe in it. I think at that stage he was ranked about 7 or 8 in the UK, so he was decent enough. And the Irish team had the 1, 2, 3, and 4. They had Paul McCreery, they had Ashley Robinson, they had Gavin Maguire, and they had Owen Cathcart. They couldn't have had a stronger team. We managed to beat them. So we win the team event, and then the singles, I'm seeded 1, and I lose in my group. It's just the most bizarre thing. I think I lose to a guy called Chris Griffiths. Crazy. He plays a little bit of a style like Johnny Crawford, where he just hits these massive backhands and they're swinging past me. I lose in the group, but fortunately enough for me, 2 players go through. Get through in second place, and then I have a horrible route through to the final. First match out of the group, Paul McCreery, Irish number 1. I think he was seeded 2 for the event. Have to play him. Of course, I win deuce in the 5th set. Beat him 35 or 40 times in my career. Most of those times are 3-2. Next match, Ashley Robinson, Ireland again. I beat him close, 3-2. Next match, Helshan Weerasinghe, British number 7 or 8. Managed to beat him 3-1. And then in the other side of the draw, making quiet progress, is Craig Howison. And I end up playing the Scottish number 2 at that stage, Craig Howison, in the final. We have this epic battle, and I pip him at the end, 3-2. But he would have been deserving of that win. You know, he played very, very well. Possibly my experience, maybe a little bit of luck as well, in managing to get over the line to become British champion. But as Colin would have known, was it this year, you know, it's better to win than to lose, and it's very, very nice when you come out of a tournament having won and having that title of being British champion.
Okay, now, when we spoke, you did want to just have a little bit about the coaches, and we got up to, obviously, Eric and Pete McQueen and Alison Rowe, and Peter Stewart. You had things to say about Peter. So can you just sort of go through your coaches?
Yeah, so
a bit of an impact.
Talking a little bit about Pete McQueen. I mean, I think we'll come back to that in a second, and I'll let Mark cover Pete McQueen just in a second. But before that, I'll speak more about the influence that Peter Stewart had on my career. You know, Pete was a quiet guy, but a very underrated coach and a very good corner man. And what I appreciated most about Pete was, you know, he would tell you something and he believed in it. So the biggest moment we had as a partnership was when we went out to one of the big Junior World Tour events. December 2002, I think it was, the Portuguese Youth Open. And at that stage, the top junior tournaments in the world, all the players played it. The top Chinese, the top Japanese, everyone played it. And my teammate was Nico Craig, if any of you guys remember him, the red hair as well. So myself and Nico, and we're drawn against Germany. Horrible draw. Probably the second or third best team in the world. They've got the world junior #1, Christian Seuss, again red hair, and they've got Patrick Baum, top 10 in the world. And both of these guys came right through to 20 or 30 in the world in the senior game. And I end up beating both of those guys, which was ridiculous at that stage. And, you know, Pete Stewart, hats off to him. His advice in the corner for me to get the big serves in at the big moments was critical. So that was great. And Nico Craig, to his credit as well, almost came out with a huge win as well against Christian Seuss. World Junior #1, he lost 3-1, but very, very tight. And then we went on and played the doubles and lost 3-2 as well. But this was all on the back of Peter Stewart's advice of blocking out who you're playing against and believing in your own game. You know, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Right, we're not going to be playing our weaknesses too often. We're going to be utilising the strengths in our game. And we're not going to worry about who's on the other side of the table, the superstar and Christian Seuss at the other side. So that was a great tournament. I've not seen Pete Stewart for a few years. I hope he's okay. I mean, hopefully after this meeting as well, these are the sort of guys that I would like to catch up with.
Yeah. Okay, any other coaches? Do you want to just have a couple of minutes? And then I just want to make sure we've caught up on all the questions. Or are you quite...
Probably another coach that had a good influence on my career was Kevin Satchell. He came up from England. I think he had been one of the national coaches down there. And again, he was good at being able to talk the talk. And he had that, you know, he did have the gift of the gab. And that was important as a corner man as well. He made you believe. And I think Neil Cameron, you know, used to get on very well with Kevin Satchell as well. And again, when you're the underdog in some of these big tournaments, it's very important to have someone in the corner that says, you know what, you're actually a lot better than you give yourself credit for. And this guy might struggle against you if you play this tactic and that tactic, etc., etc. So Kevin was great, and he gave us fond memories in the build up to 2002 in my first ever Commonwealth Games as well. He was really good at setting the practice partners and, you know, the exercises that we did as a team, which was myself, Ewan Walker, Stuart Crawford, and Neil Cameron in the build up to probably my most enjoyable tournament in my career.
And latter, you had a very, very good World Championships, and you won your group. You could have won a big game there. What are your memories of that?
Yeah, well, we were, as a team, Dave, you know, and you were a brilliant corner man there as well. And it was just great, the build up to these matches, the going away, hitting. It was very important as well, I felt, to have Callum Morrison there, a lefty. Very important. Such a nice guy. I get on really well with Callum. And the hours in the tournament that he put in with me to get the best out of my game, you know, he had to push and block and serve a certain way because I needed him to serve that way for Christian Carlson's game style. So I thank him again for that. And I thank you for, you know, the positive tournament that we had. All of us, I think, had a great tournament there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a sore one losing to Christian Carlsen, because I got off to a really good start in the 7th set as well. And in my career, 4-3 matches, I've won 28 and only lost 9. So to lose 4-3 to him there, and then 6 or 7 weeks later play him again and lose 4-3 again in another big pro tour, that was pretty sore. So, but yeah, you bounce back.
You do. Right. Boys, have we missed any questions out from emails, or have we missed any questions out from YouTube?
Well, what we need to just cover was Mark Lundberg just speaking a little bit about Peter McQueen, just briefly.
So I mean, obviously we briefly touched on Pete earlier, but I would say, observing obviously you growing up, Gavin, was that Pete had the influence that gave you a competitive edge at that starting point, because Pete used to do drills where it was all about, let's say, even like head starts or that match play practice, where in our group were used to particularly had that intensity. And I think early on in your career, Pete brought that intensity to you, and also brought that work ethic. I mean, when you worked with Pete, you worked hard for an hour. I mean, of course, I loved it. But you in particular, was that if in a one-to-one session, sweat was dripping off you. You worked very hard, whether it was multi-ball, whatever it was. And I think that influence that Pete gave you in that career was brought that work ethic to table tennis, of what you maybe learned in other sports. How could you transfer that into table tennis?
Very good.
Yeah, I don't want to go away with that, because where table tennis is advanced, and I know we're going to slightly run over the time, but it's important, is cricket took the first step. Cricket was failing, and then it brought in one-day cricket, and then later it's brought in 2020 cricket. So there's all these different forms of cricket that's absolutely revolutionised the game. And now we have ping pong, which has revolutionised table tennis. And I really would like a good, 2 or 3 minutes on ping pong, Gavin.
Yeah, ping pong. I mean, what a fantastic sport to have. Again, if you're from a family that's got next to no money at all, you can pick up a ping pong racket for a few pounds. A very good table tennis racket might set you back 100 or 120 pounds. Ping pong racket might only cost £5 or £10. Now, also, there's less spin involved in ping pong. So at whatever level you're at, you can get a rally developing, learning some of the basic shots with ping pong. So that's really good. So I feel it's very wide-ranging ping pong at whatever level you play. And then for me, the competitive side of the sport, playing the ping pong and getting Barry Hearn involved from Matchroom Sport, that was really big. We've missed over the last 10 years some really big crowds involved in matches in this country. I remember before when Matthew Syed and Desmond Douglas used to always be on grandstand and all this stuff. We've missed that. So to have this big tournament in the iconic Alexandra Palace once a year. I've had a lot of my friends travel down, see the sights in London over a few days, and come and watch table tennis, or ping pong. 2,000 people round one table tennis table. That's a lot. That is, a huge atmosphere to be involved in. And obviously, this year medaling in that tournament was, definitely one of the best achievements in my career. And again, just going against my playing style of trying to win rallies maybe early, very difficult to do that in ping pong. The spin level's down on the serve. You've got to use your backhand a bit. You've got to be able to defend well. But what a tournament. And the show that Barry Hearn puts on year after year. We've been promised some major tournaments abroad as well, and one of them was to be in Saudi Arabia. Now, automatically with that, you think, right, a very good paycheck at the end of that. Now, it's just a shame at the moment, obviously, the world we're in with the lockdown and the coronavirus, that possibly that might not go ahead this year. But that was all set in stone for pushing forward this year as well. Now, that would have led to some big prize money. So watch this space in the next few months.
Mark and Colin, have we missed anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of questions tonight that have come in. So I think apologies to people who might not get a question put in. I think it's been great. I mean, there's a lot of questions on YouTube, things that have been sent on. I mean, the question for Danny.
Back then.
Yeah,
Gavin back. Right, I'll let you have one last question each, Colin, and Mark, and then we're going to wind up.
So for my question, that's actually one of my own, was more about your legacy, Gavin. What do you want from your legacy? What do you want to see? What do you want people? How they're going to view you in like 5-10 years time? How are we going to view Gavin Rumgay in the future? What is your legacy going to be?
Well, hopefully people look back and say that guy from Perth was a very good table tennis player that also brought other players through in the game as well. He was a highly competitive guy and someone that we needed in table tennis at a time, possibly, in the last 5 or 10 years where we didn't have any standout players. It's been, since Ewan Walker retired in 2006, really, I've been very important for Scottish table tennis, I think. So if I can stay in the game another few years, hopefully bring or help Colin to come through, help some of the younger kids. I mean, I'm hearing a little bit about this young kid, Borua Chen, as well. I don't know how good he could potentially come. So, I mean, if I possibly stick around to help some of these guys, then that can only be good for my legacy in the game as well. I feel some of the guys that have retired out of the game in the last 15 or 20 years, that's sort of been it. They haven't put anything maybe back into the game. So, if I'm around and able to do that, obviously on a daily basis, I do that down in London, but obviously that's not shown up in Scotland as much.
You've got the final serve.
A quick question from Callum Morrison. He's saying British cyclist Bradley Wiggins retired from cycling in December 2016 and took up rowing in June 2017. He said, like Bradley Wiggins, could you ever see yourself pursuing a different sport and attempting to compete at a national level?
Oh, yeah. Well, in a sport that I haven't done before, or could I go back to a sport that, probably the closest would maybe be getting into something like, cycling or running. I'm quite a good runner, but, I don't know. So maybe the cycling or the running, I suppose. But still, the one thing in my career would be to walk out at centre court at Wimbledon and have one shot there. And I still believe if I had 6 months of solid training, I wouldn't embarrass myself on centre court at Wimbledon. That would still be my dream, to be able to do that.
Well, unfortunately, time has beaten us and have allowed us to go on 5 or 6 minutes. At the moment, I sit here, or we're looking at the screen, and we've got Colin and we've got Gavin, and I'm hoping they'll be part of my team for 2022 for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and then we'll all be happy. A big thanks to Mark, a big thanks to Colin, and Gavin. It's been a real pleasure. Boys, now what we normally do now is we go back to the green room and have a little chat. Thank you, everybody.